Hey everyone, it's Thomas with Studio Hall. Today we have a full tutorial video for our new trench-style bund strap pattern available at shopstudiohall.com. This is a pretty big pattern bundle with PDF templates, SVG laser files, 3 bund sizes, and over 80 possible combinations. Even if you don't pick up the pattern, hopefully this tutorial can provide some helpful tips and tricks for you. Let's jump right in. We're going for a thicker strap this time at about 6 ounces for a big watch and big wrist, but we try to factor in as many variables as possible for this pattern pack. The first thing to note is that we're using all metal hardware in the Zulu style, which means we won't be making leather keepers. Check out this video if you'd like to see how that's done. If you're unfamiliar with watch straps, here's a quick rundown on reading the measurements. The larger number refers to the length of the long piece of the strap when completed. The smaller number refers to the short piece of the strap when completed, excluding the buckle. The smallest number, which we place below, refers to the lug width of the watch, which will be the width of our strap. This is a super helpful chart for estimating your proper strap size, but we recommend treating it more as a starting place since everyone's preferences are different. We'll be using the longest strap length with the biggest bund size and a 22mm width to fit an 8.5-inch wrist on an IWC Big Pilot. Haas Zermatt is our lining of choice because of its sweat resistance and durability. The one downside is that it only comes in 2 colors. Let's glue up the bund. We use EcoStick 1804 high-strength water-based glue. You can get it at Buckle Guy. It's very thin and sticky, and you want to wait until it's translucent but not totally dry before pressing the pieces. This is a cheap roller from Amazon. It's not luxury, but it is useful. If you aren't comfortable cutting through both the upper and the lining, as we're doing here, you can cut the upper and glue it to the oversized lining piece, which you can then trim down. Since this is a strap with no taper, we're using the lug width of the watch, 22mm, the entire length. We'll start with the long piece of the strap. On both pieces, we'll mark where our lining should start, 15mm from the top. The oversized lining will align with the mark we just made. In our experience, the short side of the strap is much more time-consuming than the long side. Take your time, measure regularly, and practice the short side as much as possible. We're freestyling a bit in this video, but the pattern pack has great accuracy, whether you print or use a laser. If you do use the SVG files for laser work, we actually recommend cutting templates from acrylic or MDF instead of cutting the leather directly with a laser. We'll make a video about that soon. Skiving is an extremely important step in crafting a refined strap that will lay as flat as possible. Use a sharp knife and work on getting your edge as paper thin as possible. When you glue the lining to the short piece of the strap, the skived end should point away from the mark you've made. We want the non-skived end to act as a kind of shelf for our spring bar later on. Here we have all 3 assembled pieces, and it's time to trim the excess. We'll be punching a round tip for the long piece of the strap. You can also use a punch, or use a coin and a sharp knife. Back to skiving. but this time for the 3 exposed ends of the upper that will be folded over. This is a little fiddly, but we like to bevel and burnish the edges of the upper folds as well, and the only way to do this is before we fold and glue. When we burnish, we always use Tokonol. You can grab it on almost any leather supply website, or if you're near a Tandy, they've also started stocking it near me as well. The leather we're using today is actually a rough-out chrome tan, and while we usually only burnish veg tan, this leather, combined with the Zermatt lining, takes a burnish much better than most. If you do go with edge paint, be aware that it will widen your strap width by about 1 to 2 millimeters, especially if you put down a primer coat. Furthermore, if you do go with edge paint, we usually don't sand or bevel, as long as we have a clean cut. A rounded edge is more difficult to paint consistently, but not impossible. Unfortunately, the next portion of the video was corrupted, so bear with me. We'll want to cut the 2 bund keepers, 7mm wide, and arrange them on the bund pretty close to the watch lugs to prevent wiggle. This will vary greatly by watch. Next, we'll simply stitch all the way around at 3mm from the edge. We're using 3.38mm slanted irons from Rocky Mountain and 0.45mm thread. I mentioned earlier that we're using the non-skived end of the lining as a kind of shelf for the spring bar, and this needle will serve as a placeholder while we glue and fold. A roughing tool is extremely useful to get good glue adhesion, but you can use a scratch awl as well. Really press this down and make sure the glue takes. The thinner your skive, the easier this will be. Next, we stitch all the way around the long strap. Watch as you make those first and last holes to make sure you aren't piercing the edge of the fold on the back side of the strap. We want to stitch to perfectly reach across the 2 pieces. For us, that means 2 stitches before the fold. Always close your holes up with a bone folder before stitching to prevent gaps. We'll be using the long tail method of saddle stitching, which I showed in detail in our last video, so check that out if you'd like to learn more. This time we're using about 4 times the length of the stitch line for thread, and John James 004 needles. We'll start and end with 2 back stitches to really reinforce the overlap and the folded portion. Since we use polyester thread, we can cut and burn down the ends with a thread zap. I like to pull both ends to the back side of the strap so that the burned ends aren't visible. After we sew, we want to make sure to tap down the stitches to keep them nice and flat and prevent catching on anything. Another way to do this is with edge clamp pliers, which are also super useful for pressing glued pieces together. Let's bevel and burnish the long strap. Next, we'll punch the oblong hole for the buckle. If you have an oval punch, or you're good at making oval holes with a round punch and knife, you can do this prior to folding. The method we use here after folding is great for when you aren't exactly sure where the hole will need to go. We didn't show it here, but remember to rough up the lining before you glue. Since we're using Zulu-style hardware with no spring bars, we're going to slide all of our pieces on now and stitch them down later. We're almost finished. Now we stitch the short strap at 3mm from the edge, being careful not to pierce the overlap on either end. We'll make two separate stitch lines directly across the strap to keep the buckle and the keepers in place. You can also just have one hole on the left and right before and after the first keeper to achieve the same function. This part can be as technical as you want to make it, punching the circular holes for the long strap. If you have a regular hole punch, just measure out the center of the strap about 35mm from the tip for your first hole. We use 2mm holes and 7mm spacing. This Cinnabrox punch has been phenomenal for that purpose. Quick release spring bars can really level up your strap game and let you swap easily for any occasion. Both the spring bars and the punch are from Rocky Mountain. The punch takes some getting used to, but it's a great investment if you want to set your straps apart. Once we slide the straps into the bund, we're all done, folks. Thanks for watching, and I hope you've gotten something useful from the video. You can check the description for a link to the full bund strap template pack. We put a lot of work into it, and we're always happy to answer any questions to help you with your crafting journey. Find us on Instagram or at shopstudiohall.com. Take care, y'all.